So today, I will be shining the spotlight on one of the darkest serial killer stories you would ever come across on the internet. If you have some kind of aversion to gory stories, then this one may not be for you. Otherwise, grab your popcorn and let's dive right into it. Robert Pickton was born on October 26, 1949, to Leonard and Louise Pickton. These were popular pig farmers based in Port Coquitlam in British Columbia, which is about 15 miles east of Vancouver. Robert was a middle child out of 3 siblings. His siblings were Linda, Louise, and David. Their parents believed that a pig farm was not an ideal place to raise a female child, so they sent Linda Louise off to live with a relative. Robert's father was an abusive alcoholic, and his mother was very strict. She managed the affairs of the farm with iron fist, to a point that she would often force Robert and David to work on the farm. Louise prioritized her pig's life over her son's hygiene. She would often send the boys to school without bathing. They were reeking of manure and pig dung. Due to their poor hygiene, the Pickton brothers earned the nickname Stinky Piggies. At the age of 14, Robert dropped out of school and found a job as a butcher's apprentice. When his apprenticeship ended 7 years later, Robert went back to his parents' farm and started working full-time. In 1978, few years after Robert returned to the farm, his father died. The following year, 1979, his mother died too. So Robert and his siblings inherited the large pig farm. Over the next couple of years, Robert and David attempted to manage the operations of the farm, but they soon realized that they were not cut out for pig farming business. They started neglecting the animals. Neighbors would often complain of the pigs roaming about uncared for. One of the workers who remained with the Pickton farm, despite its declining state, described it as a very bizarre place. And even so, he thinks that Robert himself is a pretty intense guy. He never drank, smoked, abused drugs, but there was something very sinister about him. As the years went by, Robert and his brother began to host wild parties at the farm, inviting gang members, bikers, and prostitutes. In fact, they converted the farm to what they called Piggy Palace. Soon enough, the brothers made a final decision that they were not cut out for the hectic operations of the pig farm. So they did what they thought was the best thing for them: sell the property. The Pickton brothers invited an urban developer who bought the huge part of the farm to a total of 5.16 million Canadian dollars. The Pickton brothers became overnight millionaires. Now, with nothing to do with their sudden wealth, the brothers decided to do some good with it by opening a non-profit organization in 1996. This charity organization was called the Piggy Palace Good Night Society. The charity focused on raising money for various organizations like sports events and many more. On paper, this was what they did, charity. But in reality, it was a guise to throw wild parties. All manner of people were welcomed at these parties, from bikers to gang members and prostitutes. In fact, Robert would often drive to the east side, the poorest neighborhood, and invite people, promising them free drinks and free food. As the Piggy Palace party was becoming more and more famous, strange events began to happen. People started to disappear, especially women. The Eastlanders didn't go to the police, partly because they did not trust the system. But soon enough, rumors started circulating that there was a serial killer on the loose. When police were eventually contacted, they didn't offer any serious, significant help because these alleged victims were merely prostitutes and drug addicts, which is a very wrong notion. They basically insinuated that these women may have run off to other places because of their lifestyles. And since there were no bodies, there was nothing to investigate. So apparently, they doubted if women were actually missing. But the entire neighborhood knew that something very weird was happening. They beefed up their security, went out only when it was necessary. So one evening, a year after police disregarded the cases of these missing women, Robert Picton's neighbor heard a desperate knock at the door. When he opened, he saw a woman drenched in blood. One of her hands was clamped over her stomach, and the other hand, a handcuff was dangling from it. Quickly, he rushed her in and called an ambulance. While at the hospital, this woman told the nurses that her name was Wendy Lynn Esther and that she had been at a Piggy Palace party when one of the owners, Robert Picton, attempted to put a handcuff on her. She, Esther, resisted and fought back. Then, Robert grabbed a knife and stabbed her in the stomach. Esther struggled until she was able to disarm Robert and then stabbed him with his own weapon before making a daring escape. While Esther was busy recounting this horrific ordeal, Robert dragged himself into Eagle Ridge Hospital, the very same one where Esther was receiving treatment. The nurses quickly called the police. When the police arrived, they searched Robert and found in one of his pockets a handcuff key. The key unlocked the handcuff hanging on Esther's wrist. Then they placed Robert under arrest immediately. When Robert got to the station, he told the police that he had caught Esther trying to rob him. When he confronted her, she launched an attack on him. The police somehow believed Robert and dropped all charges against him because the prosecutors believed that Esther was a drug addict and her testimony was too unstable to secure a conviction. Now, Bill Hiscos, the employee who had been with the victim for so long, when he heard of the dismissal of the case, he was convinced that Robert actually attacked Esther and that he knew something about the missing women. After all, he had seen Robert bring in several women to his parties. Bill Hiscos was torn between calling the police and turning a blind eye. But after several months of dilemma, he decided that it was time to report his suspicion to authorities. So he called the tippers lines and explained all his suspicions to them. He told the police that he had seen piles of women's clothes, couple of IDs, women in and out of the property. The police asked her to come forward and testify, but Bill refused. She was very much afraid of Robert, so the police could not obtain a search warrant. Robert and his brother continued to throw these wild parties as more and more women continued to disappear until one day, the government stormed down Piggy Palace and closed it down. The reason for this was because Piggy Palace failed to provide mandatory financial statements and they were violating a lot of agricultural laws. In 2002, a neighbor came forward and testified that he had seen illegal weapons with Robert and his brother. Now, with this new information, the police were finally able to obtain a warrant and headed for the Piggy Palace. Halfway through their search, the police discovered piles of clothes of these missing women. They saw illegal weapons, DNA of about 33 women. In fact, while they were excavating all around the premises, they saw human remains, skulls, feet, different things that suggest that something sinister was happening in that place. On February 22nd, 2002, Robert was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, the murders of Serena Abbotway and Mona Wilson. More and more charges were added, bringing the total number of first-degree murder charges to 27. While in custody, Robert confessed to a cellmate who, unknown to him, was an undercover police officer, that he had murdered a total of 49 women and was willing to round it off to 50, only that he got sloppy in the end. Basically, Robert's murder spree started in 1991 and it was in full swing by 1993. Basically, Robert's murder spree started in 1991 and was in full swing by 1993. He would lure his victims to his wild parties, inject antifreeze into them, then go ahead and butcher them. As a vile and demented individual, he would often feed most of his victims to his pigs, and in the worst cases, he would cut off their body parts along with his pig meat and grind them together to be used for sausage or to be used for gelatin. Gelatin is used for makeup and all of those beauty products. Government had to put a warning out there telling people to be very careful of what they consumed. Robert Pickton's investigation was said to have cost about 70 million Canadian dollars by the end of 2003, making it one of the most expensive investigations. That's it, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe.